Good morning and welcome to Inner Temple. Just a bit about us, the people you're going to be meeting today to start with. First of all, Master Treasurer, who sits behind me. In our inn, where we govern ourselves, when you reach a certain level, we have, you'll see the room on your travels, a little parliament where we take all our decisions. And every year we elect one of our benchers to be Master Treasurer, who is head honcho, as it were, of the inn, and that is Maura sitting behind me. And every year we elect two people to be what's called Master Reader, and I'm Master Reader for this term. And the special responsibility of the reader is to look after education in the inn and to do exactly these kind of events, meet people who might be thinking of coming to the bar and introduce them to the life. My day job, when I'm not doing that, is as a barrister. As a junior barrister, I did quite a range of work, predominantly crime, but quite a bit of personal injury and contract work as well. Since I became a QC, where you tend to specialise more in one direction, I now prosecute and defend murders, serious organised crime, and fraud most of the time. I sit as a part-time judge, that's a recorder in the Crown Court, and slightly unusually, given all of that background, an ecclesiastical judge known as a Chancellor for London and for Norwich. That's mostly nowadays to do with, it's almost like a planning jurisdiction, it's to do with the protection of old buildings, and if they want a coffee machine in the church that happens to go through a 14th century frieze on the wall, to say whether they can have it or not. So, welcome to Middle Temple and the Temple generally, which is the ancient heartland of barristers in this country. What I suppose in France they call the legal quarter. In England and Wales, and I'm going to talk, I know some of you will know some of the things I'm going to say, some of you may not know anything about what I'm going to say, so I'm going to pitch it for the person who's come in who might not know really very much about the work we do at all. So apologies to those who may be at more advanced level in their training and think, well, I think I learnt that about 3 years ago. In England and Wales, we have what's called, as you probably know, a split profession, which is where you have one profession, which is solicitors or attorneys, who traditionally conducted litigation, acting for clients in their affairs, drafting their wills, looking after them almost, sometimes as a family friend. And a solicitor will have clients who are with them for life, who come to them a bit like a family doctor for almost all their ills. Barristers, historically, on the other hand, became specialists in the arguing of legal cases. For a long time, though not now, but for a long time, they had the exclusive right to argue cases in particularly the higher courts. They're also specialist lawyers in the drafting of legal documents known as pleadings, which is really just another form of persuading somebody, this time through a written argument as opposed to an oral argument. Different areas of the law specialized in by different barristers. It can be immigration law, it can be property law, wills and taxes, commercial disputes, wrongs that one citizen says another citizen has committed against them, either something for damages, a civil wrong as it's called, a tort, or a criminal wrong where they've hurt them in a way that the state takes an interest in. Some barristers actually specialize in work looking after citizens who say the state has offended them in some way, has been unfair to them. And as time went on, law also developed to regulate private relationships too, marriage, divorce, the care and the rights of children. That originally was a jurisdiction exercised by the church courts, in fact, and that descended then and transformed into what we call the family law bar now. So what's it like, in a sense, to be a barrister? You'll be hearing about that during the day. We are, in private practice, traditionally banded together in groups, which we call sets of chambers, and are self-employed. That's in private practice at the bar. In London, that will traditionally, but not exclusively, be chambers in or near the Temple, where we are now, Lincoln's Inn, not a million miles away, and Gray's Inn, not a million miles away, up in Holborn. You'll notice, as soon as you have any connection with a bar, that the language is the language almost of a flat share. So you don't call your rooms an office, you call them your rooms. If you're taken on in the set of chambers, you're called a tenant. If, as happened to me, you hang around a bit before they take you on, you're called a squatter. So it's all the language of actually property and flat sharing almost. And the head of chambers is like the guy who got the flat and holds the lease, but he's equal one with the other. One of the great advantage with us being self-employed is that we can be against each other in the same set of chambers. Now, if we were a partnership or a company, we couldn't, because there'd be a conflict of interest, because the company or the partnership would be acting for two people on opposite sides. So it's not uncommon, and in fact the fights are normally all the more heated when you find yourself up against a person you even share a room with in chambers. But it doesn't mean the client doesn't get a good deal. I think in some ways they get a better deal, because the clerks, who are almost like our theatrical agents who promote us, who take a commission for the work they get in, if you're against another member of chambers, they ask you every day when you come back from court, who won today then? And so it adds to it. But barristers are far, far more nowadays than just self-employed practitioners in the sort of work you might traditionally understand from television barristers, of whom I know a lot about, because there was an old series called Kavanagh many years ago, for which I was the legal advisor, and a bit more controversially, Judge John Deed, who did get up to some things that I have to say I did warn the author weren't necessarily exactly what happened in court, but he told me it's a what-if story. What if we had a judge like this? Barristers now come from every background, every culture. Many become employed barristers, so they don't do private practice at all, working for the state or local government or in companies, large companies, small companies, or not practicing law at all, in fact. Because unusually, the qualification of barrister is both a degree and a professional qualification. And it carries huge international recognition throughout the world. We have many, many students who come from a number of different countries all over the world and who return home to practice in their own countries. We had 3 ceremonies in this hall only a few days ago to call about 150 students to the bar. One young man I spoke to had come, he'd done his course, I think online mostly, but done his course in Islamabad in Pakistan, and he came over for this call ceremony. You can do it online, but he didn't want to do it online. And he came over from Islamabad, and I was talking to him and his family, and he said, after a little holiday, I'm going back and I will practice in Islamabad. Similarly, a young woman I met from Ghana, who was going to go back to Ghana in the same way. So this inn has always had huge international connections, and you see a lot of people, different backgrounds, cultures, who may be studying all kinds of things, if indeed they go into law at all. Why would one want to become a barrister? Well, again, you'll hear today in the programme all sorts of different barristers talking about different types of work and the kind of life experiences they have. Sometimes I say to people, and any other barrister who tells you, or you tell you've listened to me, will say, oh, he always says all these kind of things. Be careful, they're generalizations, and this is a generalization. But it's slightly like this. Supposing you study medicine at university, and you say to the outside world when you've finished, they say, what did you do? I studied medicine at university. That is a different thing from saying, I'm a doctor. And the outside world knows that is a different thing. Both very good things to do, but the doctor is the taking on of the thing you studied and turning it into a professional qualification. In just the same way, to say I studied law at university, many people do who don't become barristers. That's a great thing too. I wasn't actually very good at it, but that's a great thing too. But to say I studied law at university and I am a barrister are two completely different things, and the world recognizes them as two completely different things. Now, old man talking, but life is actually very short. My father said that to me, and I remember thinking, another one of little life lessons for me. Unfortunately, it's true. You'll soon find yourself my age, far, far faster than you think, looking back on the life you've actually had. But it has one advantage. Of course it's different now. Of course your way of learning is different from the way I learned, and so on and so forth. But I can remember my first time I came into this inn as if it were yesterday. It's a thing you never forget. And I remember that it was quite daunting. Because whatever kind of background you come from, if you're going into a world that is completely different from one that you've met before, which has its own little names and acronyms and the way they talk about things, it can be very easy to be daunted. And this gives you an opportunity to see one of what we call the Inns of Court, Middle Temple, to meet practicing barristers and hopefully some judges, and just see us, please, if you can, as you with just a slightly different degree of age and experience, or in my case, a lot of difference in age, probably not all that much in experience. So see us as that. We're just you, older, and we understand that it can be daunting, and we want to help you and also to encourage you if you want to do it, but also to do so with a mind that understands what it's all about and whether, therefore, you can judge it's the right career path for you. It's true in any profession, by the way. It's not just lawyers. Doctors, actors, musicians, accountants, they all have their lingo, the way they express themselves, their traditions, what they do. And everybody who starts something, when they come from college and their studies, always has that feeling, that experience of, this is all a bit daunting. But don't worry. This is, for instance, an extremely friendly inn, Middle Temple. People will always help you. They'll always give you advice. Barristers love talking about themselves, their work, and so you'll never ever have a problem engaging a barrister with assisting you with anything. This open day gives you a look into the world of a barrister. Well, what is an Inn of Court? Now, we're going to have sort of several hundred years history in a very brief period of time, so don't worry. From the earliest days, the teaching of how to be a barrister was a handing down of knowledge from one generation to another. And the tradition in the bar particularly was teaching whereby you would meet in little groups with a more senior barrister who would explain to you how you did things, rather than the formal sort of education that we're more used to now. And like doctors joining a medical school, barristers have to join an Inn of Court, which is a sort of college in effect, and barristers in England and Wales have to join one of these. There are 4. There's Gray's Inn. I mean, I look as if it's miles away. At my age, it is miles away, but in fact, it's 5 minutes walk, and that's up to the north. Then you've got Lincoln's Inn, which is between us and Gray's, and then there's here Middle and Inner Temple, who share Middle Temple Lane effectively being the dividing point. Of course, we all think our own inn is the best. You will never get 2 barristers to agree about which inn is the best if they come from different inns, I can tell you. But I think we're right. We also are on an amazing site, as you can tell when you come in, which we're very conscious of. Land that was originally owned by the Knights Templars. And in fact, when Dan Brown wrote the Da Vinci Code, the Temple Church had a new lease of life. They could hardly shut the doors on the number of people who wanted to come in, although I'm not sure the things that Dan Brown said happened there necessarily did. I hope you won't mind me saying. And we share Inner Temple and Middle Temple, the magnificent Temple Church, which is a rare example of a round church in England. We have survived fires and bombs, and if you look as you come in, you'll see pictures of that end of the building which suffered severe bomb damage in the Second World War, and thanks to the help particularly from the American Canadian bars, was rebuilt as it was. I don't think after the Second World War we would have actually had the money in this country at that particular point. So the building was saved. And of course, we weren't the only building in this area that got tremendous bomb damage. It's a magnificent building where you are sitting. At one time, Elizabeth I was walking where you are now. She came to watch Shakespeare's premiere of Twelfth Night in this hall. And we put on an anniversary production, must be about, well, whatever, 20 years ago, thank you, she knows my maths is bad, 20 years ago, where it was actually staged as it was then, with lighting from the floor, with an all-male cast, which actually made the jokes funnier in a way. You could see how it would have been very funny to an Elizabethan audience. And it was a place sometimes of very fierce dispute. You probably can see on the doors the spikes that are there. I thought they were to stop us getting out during dinner when I first came here, because that's what somebody told me. But in fact, they were to stop rioters. I don't know whether the rioters were getting in or we were the rioters trying to get out, but they would stop people climbing over the doors for that reason. Now they just look sort of rather sinister but picturesque, but they have a story to them. And in this hall, in the early part of the 17th century, before the English Civil War, it was a time of huge dispute, people taking one side or another in what would turn into a huge civil war in the country eventually. Lawyers, people often before they did something else, whether they went into politics or whatever, were barristers. And barristers had a lot of connections in the founding of the United States of America, barristers from within. So it's got lots of history. However, you will also see our wonderful new social centre that's been opened with a cafe that leads on into the beautiful gardens, where it is said the Wars of the Roses started by two people arguing and picking two different roses. I have to say I don't believe that story. I didn't at the time and I don't now. I'm sorry if that's the official history of the inn. That seems to me a very unlikely start. But so as the modern lives with the old, and you see these charming sets of chambers all around, how picturesque. Just put your nose, not too closely, else they'll call the police, but put your nose on the window to see what's inside, and you'll see cutting-edge equipment, computers, technology. So the old very much lives with the new in the inn. But the heart of your practicing life still is your Inn of Court, Gray's Inner, Lincoln's, or our beloved Middle Temple. They look grand, but they're a professional home where you receive help, support, often food, actually, and more fun than I believe you have in any other job, but I would say that, wouldn't I? This is your chance today to look at and around Middle Temple and hear about the work. It's a quirky, diverse, bubbling place we call Domus, home. It's our home. And we identify ourselves with it together with our body of fellow Middle Templars who, as I say, are all over the world. The open day is a way you can look at that in a relaxed way and talk to people about anything that you want to ask about what a career at the bar means. Although education of lawyers is now carried out by universities and colleges who grant law degrees and some of the early training, when you get to that period of the cusp of entry to the bar and just beyond, then training falls again to the Inns of Court, who traditionally were always the trainers. And this time teaching comes not from teachers in the sense of professional teachers, brilliant as they are in our colleges and universities, but this time from practicing barristers, going back to the old way it was taught. Practicing barristers who give up their time, who come in and conduct advocacy classes, specialist classes on the types of law that you're actually doing, and with whom you can also interact afterwards to get help. I remember as a young barrister, frequently something would happen in court, and I didn't understand why, but I didn't really like to ask because I thought I'd look stupid. One was, I didn't realize when you're in court, you never leave the judge without a barrister in front of him, which is called dressing the judge. I happened to be that last barrister one day. I didn't realize the rule existed, and I just walked out. I saw the judge look at me, Now, what the judge will normally do is say, oh, please go, you don't need to wait. But you do need him or her to say that. I'd walked out thinking, why am I getting these strange looks from the usher and the judge? Got into the robing room where I was sort of pinned up against the wall by another barrister. Do you realise what you've just done? But of course, I didn't. Now, in this generation, you can ask about these things much more easily. Nobody will think you're stupid. We love talking about it, and anything that's on your mind, you can discuss with us. So what it comes to in the end is that you will be taught in this in handing on by us what was once handed to us by other people. So it's a repayment of the obligation we have for barristers who did that for us in our generation. It's an obligation we actually enjoy, we like doing, and I hope for all of you, whether you decide to come to the bar or not, this will be for you a very interesting day. Thank you very much.
Welcome, everybody. I'm only going to keep you for a couple of minutes because I'm not part of the programme in any sense, really. I just want to echo all that Master Reader, David Etherington, has just said. He and I started at more or less the same time, although he's an awful lot older than I am. And when we came here, it was a strange world, and it took a bit of time to get used to it. And for those of you who come here, you will find that. It is, I hope, much more approachable, or we are much more approachable these days. We are, or historically we were, like a madrasa, like a monastery, like a seminary. People, and in those days they were men, came here, lived in the buildings around here, would eat their meals in here, and that would be part of the learning process. And that's, I think, although I've never checked this, I think that's why the language of tenancies and rooms and things has continued to this day. Now, generally speaking, we don't live here anymore. Generally speaking, we don't eat all our meals here. But we do as much of the training and learning here as we possibly can. And so what you've just heard about anybody here being willing to answer any question you have is true. As I say, David and I started more or less at the same time. We have remained firm friends. He's still a QC practicing. I'm now a judge. People's careers go in different directions. We work very closely with Krista Richmond, from whom you will hear in a moment. She's been here for 30 years, 27 years. We've never let her escape either. Mark Fenlon, who's the porter on duty today, started more or less at the same time as I did as well, I think slightly before me. And he's still here. Not because we've put spikes on the door to stop them getting out, but actually because people become a family here. And if it is the right place for you, and if this is the right career path, the right decision for you, you will always find help and encouragement and advice here. Don't underestimate the life of a barrister. It's a hard life, it's difficult work, you have to work hard, and you have to be lucky. But if it's the right thing for you, then grab it with both hands. Take advantage of all the help that's going to be offered to you today and in the future. I hope you enjoy the day. If you get a chance at lunchtime or coffee break, just have a little wander around, because this is a place of magic, I think. And I hope that the beauty of the buildings, the lovely day, and the wonderful lessons that you're going to learn, or the examples you're going to be given, the stories you're going to be told today, will inspire you to join this profession, to join this inn, and to have a wonderful, wonderful working life. So good luck to all of you, because you do need a bit of luck. Stick with it, enjoy it, and I hope by the end of the day you'll go away thinking, yes, that's for me. Thank you.